What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor season 39, episode of the season 39, Island of the Idols, episode 6, where we had a reward challenge and Island of the Idols segment and an immunity challenge. So my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and this was crazy. Just like all of the stuff that they tried to fit into one episode, they did pretty well, I think. Like, I wasn't too mad, but I also definitely felt how rushed it was with the reward and the Island of the Idols and the immunity challenge. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, I feel like the pacing for this episode, even though we did have these three things, was pretty good. I never felt like that I was bored necessarily at any parts of the episode. So I didn't even realize we had all three jam packed into one until like afterwards. So I feel that was good. But I don't know, maybe more time with the tribe going to tribal council would have been interesting, or more reasoning behind people flipping their votes and whatnot. But I think all in all, this was such a good episode. I was like on the edge of my seat the entire freaking time. There's so many twists and turns. I really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. Like you said, I would have liked a little more time before tribal, just because I'm not sure how this is going to work out when there's like this episode was really nice because there was one big conflict that they had, and it was like Vokai versus Lyro, or old Vokai versus old Lyro on the new tribe. And so it's like when there isn't as clear cut of like one big conflict, like when there's like three or four different targets, possibly the episodes could get really like confusing and messy if not enough time is given to the tribe before tribal. So
Yeah, so I guess it'll be interesting in the weeks to come if we will have all three segments. Obviously, we need to have immunity, so that can't really get squished out. Maybe they could do a reward and immunity challenge together to keep that reward aspect in there. But because Elaine picked a name from the bag, next week you don't necessarily need a reward challenge because the person from the Orange Tribe will just go from their beach if there is no reward challenge. So I like the threesome, the three-peat this episode of all three. So no, yeah, I liked the timing of it. So
yeah, I think it won't be bad if they do it again. They just need to be careful to make sure they do it right, because they definitely also spent less time on Island of the Idols than they have in the past. Like there wasn't a whole like song and dance about them teaching her anything really. I think they just were like, sometimes in Survive you need to make split second decisions. And then like they said a little bit, they being Rob and Sandra said a little bit about Elaine. So yeah.
yeah, I was confused about that. I was like, what is she learning? Because it seemed like the whole Island of the Idols segment was them all talking about how Elaine made such a split second decision where she didn't let the sand run out, but it just sort of she just sort of said yes, sort of a la Nora saying yes without actually like understanding or hearing what the actual challenge that she has to do is. But I mean, I guess it makes sense. Elaine seems to be a balls to the wall, and she's actually described that way this episode by Sandra. And so, you know, yes, it makes sense because I feel like you can never say no on Survivor because it could turn out really well. And even if it doesn't turn out in your favor, like that's a monkey wrench in the game and that's part of the game. So you can't really knock yourself for that. But I feel like when it is in a 4-4 like that, maybe you want to hear a little bit more because it definitely could have bitten them all in the ass because this was a win-lose situation if Elaine won what she was supposed to do versus if she lost, she would have screwed her people and then probably been voted out.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the things is Rob always says first, like, you need to choose, and then he explains things instead of explaining things and then being like, and you have a choice. And I feel like part of that, like, almost makes people want to be impulsive because the first thing they hear is, like, you need to make a choice. So,
Yeah, so
yeah.
this part, it was very nerve-wracking because she has the potential to get a block the vote advantage. And I think in any other situation, this is a very situation oriented advantage because it only works sort of when you have even numbers or almost even numbers where you could be like 5-4 and you bring it down to 4-4 and hope someone flips, or like we see with the idol nullifier kind of situation. So these kind of advantage is very situation specific, and it just so happens that it works out in this 4-4 situation. And so when we heard it was a block the vote, I was like, oh my God, this changes literally the rest of the episode, because if Elaine gets this advantage, they have a 4-3 technically and could vote out one of the old purple tribe. But then if she doesn't get it, they're down 3, and then Elaine could go, or they're definitely going to flip on one another or flip to the other side. And so I was like, oh my God, this is a win-lose situation for real, high
Yeah,
stakes.
like you either win big or you lose big. And even with the block of the vote, Elaine almost lost big because Aaron and Missy were both very willing to flip on their own tribe mates. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is the best situation to get a block the vote advantage, because in a 4-4 split, an immunity idol would definitely be a lot harder to play, I think, because you have to pick the right person that is getting the votes, and then you don't know if the other side is bluffing, and then you put the idol on the wrong person and then someone still goes home. So I think the idol nullifier is honestly the best thing that the survivor gods could bestow upon you in this situation. um and even though Elaine dropped it in the immunity challenge, like, it really doesn't matter, because it's still like, yo, it's 4-3 now, y'all suck. Like, y'all are dead fish in the water unless you have an idol, but then you still have to play the idol correctly, which is a lot harder to do, I feel like. So it really didn't matter she dropped it. I was so nervous that if she dropped it and then she left it on the ground there, I would have been like, oh no.
Yeah, and I think it was good for Elaine that she had Elizabeth to cover for her because I'm really not sure how she would have been able to manage it without Elizabeth there covering. So,
Yeah, I think the Elaine and Elizabeth little duo bond that they have, I was like, okay, Elaine actually being sent to Island of the Idols worked out perfectly for the old orange, even though Elaine was like, I'm small, but I'm strong. I don't want to be sat out. Like, it actually worked so well in their favor. And I feel like because they did this, like, person who sits out of the immunity challenge goes to Island of the Idols, they definitely can't do it every time. Now the tribes are even anyways, so they couldn't do it next week. But if people get the hint that, like, oh, this is happening a lot now, that person who sits out gets to go there and potentially can win an advantage, because people can probably start sniffing it out that, like, oh, that's interesting. Elaine went here and she suddenly had something, or maybe she had it from before, but like, people would maybe want to sit out of the reward challenge to go and potentially win big.
yeah, it's one of those things where you might end up sitting out people who shouldn't be sat out because they want to go to Island of the Idols. So, or people could like fake an injury so that they'd be on the sit out bench. It's just wild.
Yeah, which I guess would add a new level of strategy in there. Like, oh, a big boy, big dog wants to sit out, and then you're like, no, but then they really want to sit out, and then it caused some strife within the tribe. I guess could be interesting. But then I don't know. I just think when it becomes so predictable, like, okay, person who we sit out gets to go potentially win something, it would make it more strategic in the way. But maybe if the other tribe gets to pick who sits out and then they get sent to Island of the Idols, it would add another layer. But I think because people would start to get the hint that Island of the Idols isn't necessarily all that bad, that it would just cause everyone to want to sit out, maybe.
Yeah. So I agree that it's one of those things where they can't do it predictably because as soon as something becomes predictable on Survivor, it becomes boring. So I'll be interested to see like how they continue to like mix things up with like how they choose who goes to Island of the Idols. Because, like we've said before, I don't think the picking the name out of the bag is the coolest thing. But
Yeah, so I liked how they switched it up in the past too, with like Nora being able to volunteer, and then, oh, sneaky, sneaky, whoever is sat out, then they get to go. So next week is going to be the bag. We saw Elaine pick a name. But yeah, I think the Elaine and Elizabeth, because they've both been to Island of the Idols, like after episode 1, everyone is giving Elizabeth so much slack for lying, even though now like we know that they have to lie about it. And so them being brought closer together because they've both gone to Island of the Idols is like really cool to see, because we didn't see it with Vince being voted out, and we didn't really see it with Nora and Kelly being that they're on the same tribe. So I like to see that them both doing this thing brought them closer together, and Elizabeth was willing to help her and like cover her while Elaine was trying to get this advantage, because Elizabeth knows that this is a life or death, because it would have been 4-3 winning or 4-3 losing.
yeah, and then also when they get the advantage, Elaine immediately like tells Elizabeth like, "Yeah, I got it," and then. They go and tell Missy and Aaron, and I'm still not sure if that was the right choice for them to make. Because,
if they didn't tell Missy and Aaron, how would Missy and Aaron not flip?
I think they could have told them something along the lines of, like, I have something that we're going to be using without, like, giving the specifics. Because it's like, Missy and Aaron, or Aaron at least, was still considering flipping, even if he knew that they had a block a vote. And if he had been, like, seriously flipping, he would have told like the other people, like, listen, they have a block a vote, we gotta like include that in our plans. So because I think it was kind of arrogant. I think Lauren was like, I don't think Elaine has the smarts to like outwit us or whatever. And so like if Aaron had disabused them of that notion and was like, yeah, Elaine has something, that could have been really dangerous. So telling him could have blown up the game in a different way.
Yeah, I guess that's interesting to think about. I feel like Elaine needed to tell Missy and Aaron about the advantage, and I liked how Elizabeth was like, okay, Elaine, it's your advantage, you tell them. But yeah, I could see that like Missy and Aaron were like, ooh, maybe on board, maybe not on board, which could have went poorly if they really did want to flip on Elaine and still vote her out. But then I was like, honestly, Aaron would be such a big villain and is sort of getting a low-key villainous edit if he flips on Elaine, because I think sticking with the old orange is the smartest thing to do, even if like he still wants to vote Elaine out later because she was the first person that he wanted to vote out. But yeah, I could definitely see where like if he wasn't loyal, quote unquote, then he could have blown this advantage up. But it wouldn't necessarily be bad for Elaine, because the other side doesn't have an idol, which like they wouldn't know that the other side has an idol. But risk and reward, I feel like telling Missy and Aaron here was a smart thing to do, because you need them to stay on board and you don't want them to flip, and to tell them that you have this thing where it is a legit 4-3. It's not like, oh, we need to play an idol correctly. That throws the wrench in your plan. Like, this is a legit 4-3 distinction. They can't necessarily do anything about it, because if they did even have an idol, there's so much bluffing that you can do to throw them off. It's hard to pick a 1 out of 4 versus let me block your vote. We are 100% up in the numbers now. And I feel like just for Missy and Aaron, it seems like they're very power hungry. Like, not necessarily that they're thinking of the smartest things to do in every situation, but it seems like from each vote to the next, they just want the most power, which could be said that is playing a good game, because you know where things are going and you know what's happening. But it seems like they are just really power hungry.
Yeah, I think it's like Aaron's whole thing was like, oh, if I stay with my old tribe, I'll still be in power. If I go to the new tribe, I'll still be in power. And so I think that's like, yeah. I'm interested. Rachel and I were talking before the podcast started about how we didn't really get a lot of Aaron's rationale behind his final decision that he made. And so I kind of wish that we had seen more than just Aaron being wishy washy, because I think that obviously it would have been a more boring tribal council if we had known that Aaron was going to vote for Elaine, but or wasn't going to vote for Elaine. But I still wish that we got like him being like, here would be the advantage of sticking with my old tribe. Because I feel like we really only heard him talk about how he wanted to vote out Elaine and never really mentioned like, and it might be a good idea to vote out one of the other people because like, oh, Jason's really smart or whatever. So
Yeah, I think the editing really got us because I like the clips where everyone was giving reasons why one of the four old purple would be a good choice to go home. And we saw a lot of Aaron confessionals being like, it's a live vote. Everyone better watch out and all of that. And so, yeah, I agree. I'm hoping maybe next time we'll get like a flashback. This is the aftermath of the vote when it's all dark back at camp. And then we see Aaron like, this is my decision. I'm going to stick with Elaine and vote Jason out. And we hear some of the rationale behind that because it did seem that like Aaron and Missy went into tribal like this is the plan. It wasn't actually a live tribal for Old Orange. Like they planned that and they weren't swayed at tribal versus purple. It seems like they were flipped at tribal to vote Elaine because in the after interview press with like Jason and other people, Jason was saying that like the four purple we're going to vote Aaron out and then hoping that they flipped Aaron and Missy to vote Elaine and then Elaine and Elizabeth would have voted whoever from purple, but then it would have been a 4-2-2 split and then Aaron would have gone home. And so then I'm just like, oh wow. So that's why at tribal we saw them saying like, okay, we're voting Elaine, hoping that Aaron would still vote Elaine with them and then Elaine would go home. But I was like, okay, for Aaron, he's such a villain if he votes Elaine out after she's willing to save his ass and like stick with my peeps, as she kept saying throughout the episode. When we saw for sure that Aaron and Missy were willing to flip, I was like, damn, low-key feels bad for Elaine that she's willing to put her neck out for people that aren't going to put their necks out for her. But like to flip and be at the bottom of a 9 versus now voting Jason or voting any of the purple people out, you're at a 7-8, and then you could even it up come merge.
yeah, so I think that plan seems so unnecessarily complicated to make it like a 4-2-2 split. Like, yeah, but I'm glad that Aaron didn't go home and that, yeah, I feel like Aaron is not getting a super positive edit, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon because this episode was not kind to his edit either because he was shown to basically be trash talking Elaine. But I don't want him to go home because every season needs like someone you can root against, and I feel like Aaron's becoming that person. But yeah, I think it was interesting how Orange like basically became a like brick wall in the face of Purple being like, well, we could, blah, blah, blah. And I thought it was really funny. I think it was Rob said like he's really selling the Kool-Aid, and then Sandra was like, but they're not buying. So I think that's really good. It's good when you can trust your alliance to like stick together and not get like freaked out when like someone else is like talking sweet or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, which I guess they sort of did get tricked by talking sweet. I guess we don't really know if Aaron and Missy would have voted Elaine out because we see them flip back and then vote Jason out. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like low key, Aaron sort of owes Elaine his game in the light, like his life in the game, because if he was going to get voted out this episode with a 4-2-2 split, like that would have been interesting as well. And purple would have pulled a fast one over Aaron's head, which would have been fun to see, considering that they're always so like, yeah, we're in charge of this game. We were going to flip, but then the people got him would have been interesting to see. But I feel like with this, Aaron went too far with convincing the other side that they were going to flip. It looked like Tommy and Lauren were hella freaking pissed off, mostly at Aaron, looks like less so at Missy. I feel like if Aaron wanted to keep Tommy as like a bro alliance, keep the other people as an alliance, he should have brought them in and hinted before, like, yo, something's going to go down at Tribal, like, you're safe, but one of your people is going to go home, kind of thing. And maybe giving them a hint of what was going to happen. Like, we've seen it in the past where you're going to blindside their group, but you're bringing them in as a loyal ally. I think Aaron went too far, tricking them into thinking that he was going to vote Elaine out of the game. And it seems like they're going to be pissed mainly at Aaron next week and less so at Elaine for having an advantage.
Yeah, and then Jason's parting words of "Don't trust Aaron," I feel like definitely didn't help that. Like Aaron just he tried to play both sides, and then he's going to get a reputation as wishy-washy. And I think that Elaine and her people are definitely not going to be happy to know that he was like promising them so much. Because
Yeah.
like Elaine was so convinced that no one would flip, which I think is not the greatest thing for her like strategy game. But I think Aaron is definitely going to take a hit, and he might be an easy next vote out because both sides can agree that he's like not to be trusted. So,
And yeah, it could flip the other way and Aaron goes home, because I think Tommy and Lauren could use Aaron wanting to flip on Elaine as a crack and be like, Elaine, yo, you can't trust you can't trust Aaron. And we see how Elaine can get when her name is brought up on the chopping block, a la Ronnie being voted out episode 1. And so I think this sort of puts Aaron in very risky waters, because it seems like Tommy and Lauren are going to stay together and really fight back. Like, F you, dude. You didn't tell us what was happening, and we thought we were building some kind of relationship here. And so I feel like maybe that's where Aaron faltered in this. Like, yeah, it's always risky if he told them on the DL and then they had an idol, but an idol is a lot harder to play because you have a 1 in 4, so 25 chance of picking the right person. If you all bluffed it super well, like, if you put the mark on someone that wasn't Jason, so say you blocked Dan's vote and then you vote Jason out, like, you could have bluffed them, versus like Boston Rob said in their weird spy shack up at Tribal Council, like, just because Jason's the mark doesn't mean he was the one being voted out. And so they could have played it that like it wasn't so necessarily obvious that like, oh, you blocked Jason's vote, we're voting Jason out, just in case the other side did have an idol. It would have been maybe more foolproof to block someone else's vote.
yeah, but it's kind of like if you're in the interest of maybe keeping good relations with people, it's easier to block someone and then vote them out because then they won't go whining like, "Oh, why'd you block me?" Blah 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 blah. And I think it also like speaks something to like the loyalty dynamics within the alliances, because it's like you block the person who you think is most likely to stay voting with the alliance, and you don't block someone who's on like the bottom of the alliance. And so I think that also gives information, like who you block gives your alliance information as to what the other alliance thinks of your dynamics. So
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting way. Yeah, if Aaron did bring in the other people, then I think you should have had like the maybe play a little bluff there, because if they did have an idol, it could blow up in your face. But because Aaron didn't try to bring in Tommy and them to like mend fences before the vote actually happened and left them blindsided, then like there's nothing really they can do about it because they didn't think of that plan. But yeah, I think it makes sense to vote Jason over Dan, because it seemed like Lauren and Tommy had the relationships with the other tribe to be saved this episode. because yeah, Dan, we don't really see much from him on the tribe, and then athletically, Jason's better at puzzles, and probably more strategic. And so in post interviews, Jason was saying that he was being called Fishback at the start because people didn't know his name off the other tribe. And so like that's also not good because you don't want to have the like smart nerd archetype that is being ruined for any people that are like nerdy looking and then smart.
Yeah. So we discussed mostly what happened on that tribe, but then on the other tribe, with all of the J names, Jack and Jamal and Janet, ugh, and still like messes me up a little bit. There was also a tad bit of drama on that side, and I was interested because I think we got more of that tribe than I would have expected considering they didn't go the tribal council.
Yeah, so we saw Jack and Jamal, and then we also see Nora talking. And so I feel like the Jack and Jamal moment, I think it was a very good learning moment. Some people on the internet are like bashing the entire thing, but I think like the talk about race and privilege is something that we need to see more of. Like these reality TV shows are supposed to reflect society and real life, and like these are things that people go through in real life. And so I liked seeing it on national TV so that like we see Jack learning. It's a learning moment for him, but it's also a learning moment for the audience, which I really enjoyed watching. And I think like over the summer, we had a podcast episode about Big Brother and how they were not airing the racial comments that were made during their show. And so I was like, okay, I am glad the producers gave this the screen time that it deserved. It had a lot of screen time this episode. And I just think Jamal is so eloquent in his talking and explaining in his confessionals and just to Jack in person. And since he works in a school like administration role, it fits so perfectly, I thought.
Yeah, I think you could see when Jack and Jamal were like talking after they had done their whole original thing with like the apology. I thought it was really good also that they showed Jack apologizing because I think one of the things about the Big Brother thing was that the guy who was making racist comments just kept making racist comments and like wasn't acknowledging that they were not good. So I think the fact that Jack apologized and was like, "Listen, I didn't really mean that. I really respect you," and then was open to hearing what Jamal had to say about it was really good. And then obviously, like you said, when Jamal was like teaching, you could see that Jack was really engaged and Jamal was
Mm-hmm.
really engaged, like in that conversation. Like you could tell it was more than just like legwork to make their alliance stronger or whatever. Like it was them genuinely trying to understand each other.
Yeah, and so I think it's good on Jack's end for realizing and then also being willing to listen and be open and to learn because I feel like a lot of times that doesn't happen. Like we said in the Big Brother incident, like those people did not really learn, I don't think, about why their actions were not appropriate. And so, at least in this situation, people can learn. Like sometimes what you say has negative consequences for other people. It makes them feel uncomfortable, it makes them feel unsafe. And you might not even realize what you say have like racial or negative connotations to them. So I think overall, like I really liked listening and liked learning about the race and privilege. And yeah, I thought it was so interesting when Jamal was like, yo, this is still a game. And so because it still is a game, you can't really blow it out of the water and like get mad at someone or like not keep an alliance with someone. And so I feel like both of them realize that like, yeah, it's still a game, but in the end, it seems like Jamal and Jack are each other's closest allies. So they sort of need each other. And this did seem to bring them closer together.
Speaking of Jack and Jamal, Nora was like still she was trying to get something moving against Jack and Jamal. It did not really work.
I was like, okay, what Nora was saying, it makes a lot of sense. It's sort of like Aaron wanting Elaine out still from episode one, but Nora just doesn't have the social capital to necessarily pull any moves off. I think if Nora went to someone like Kelly or maybe Janet, but we don't really see much from Janet, but like Kelly seems to have a lot of social capital. People will listen to Kelly. Nora telling Kelly and then Kelly going around and being like, this is what we should do, or like, what do you think about this, could have had a lot of more traction than Nora telling Dean, which like, oh, they just met kind of thing. Are they even that close? But Dean tells Jamal, and then they're both sort of laughing like, haha, Nora's a wacko. And then Jamal is saying he wants Nora out, which I feel like, okay, if Orange does go to tribal next week, Nora could be an easy vote to vote out, but I feel like it seems like this season everyone is playing very balls to the wall. They'll realize that why vote Nora out if she's in your pocket? Like she's willing to vote with you and Karishma's willing to vote with you. You're not going to vote them two out. You'd rather flip the vote and vote someone like Jamal or Jack out who are more wild cards and are smarter and have more potential to win the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Nora's really interesting because I think she has good ideas, but she just has no idea how to implement them. And even with her ideas, they're like 50-50. So
yeah, Nora just doesn't have the social capital to pull off a vote Jamal out, but if she did talk to the right person, I think she could get her way. And I think it'll be interesting to see next week when Jeff is like, come on in, guys. And then they all see that Jason was voted out. I think that'll be very shocking. And people will be like, oh, what the heck happened? How did it become 4-3 in favor of Orange? Which will be very interesting, especially because, like, Orange of Dean and Karishma are like not really with Orange, but maybe if it evens the numbers next week and Purple goes to tribal again and then it goes to even numbers, maybe at merge they just stick together because that's the easy thing to do for the first vote at least. But like, I don't know, low key, Purple should throw the next Purple should throw the next immunity challenge and then even out the numbers, which is very risky because I don't think you ever want to throw a challenge. But if you're 4-3 and you know people aren't going to flip, but like you can't count in idols and whatever, but if you even out the numbers come merge, because you're probably merging in like 2 episodes.
the thing is, they have no guarantee that they won't flip. Like Aaron and Missy almost flipped this week, and it looks like Aaron is willing to flip next week too. So I feel like Purple throwing the challenge isn't a good idea because of Aaron.
Really? I feel like Aaron and Missy, they're like the power hungry. They would want the 4 to keep together, and that's why they voted with Elaine, so they know they have a numbers advantage. Versus if they voted Elaine out, they're low-key sitting ducks, and you can't really guarantee Purple sticking together. But like, yeah, we really don't know. Maybe Elaine will be pissed off next week and want to vote Aaron out because Aaron was willing to flip on her. But I just see Aaron wanting to keep the 4 together now because that's where the numbers are. Let's pick off the Purple one by one.
The thing is, with Aaron, if he joins the Purple tribe, then he still has the numbers. And then he also has an advantage after the merge if they remain in the higher numbers. So it's kind of like,
do you think
which
Purple will
way
bring
does it
him
go?
in now, though?
I don't
This
think
blindside?
so, but who knows? I think what Aaron does next episode will be very telling for how the game will go for him.
Yeah, we could see Aaron being flipped on next week and getting voted out, but I don't see Aaron necessarily in the power position unless his 4 orange stick together and they dictate one of the 3 purple who goes home. But if Elaine or Elizabeth get wind that Aaron was going to flip, maybe they'll flip alongside with Tommy and Lauren and then vote Aaron or Missy out. So they're low-key sitting pretty if things don't go poorly. But yeah, I think like we said, Aaron low-key handled it wrong by not giving a little hint to Tommy and Lauren to keep them in his good graces.
Yeah.
But yeah, reward and immunity challenge really quick. I thought it was cool that the person on the sled in the reward challenge had to shoot the targets because it's sort of like you can't really have a super heavy person carried on the sled, even though the heavier person would probably be better at shooting targets because then they're just too heavy to carry. And during the challenges, I was like, yo, Aaron is making himself such a huge challenge threat. He was in the hero role for the reward challenge, being on the slingshot. He won that for them. If I was like, yo, if Aaron wins the immunity challenge doing the basketball single-handedly as well, I was like, that is way not good because he just won 2 challenges for his team back to back, and he looks like a huge challenge threat. So I was like, okay, it's low-key good that he didn't win the basketball because it maybe knocks him down a few pegs, but he's still a huge challenge threat, which is interesting because I feel like Tommy could also be a challenge beast, but he's playing it differently where he doesn't step up for the hero roles and he's more laying low, versus Aaron seems to always be in the winning position kind of thing.
Yeah, like Tommy will shoot some baskets, but he won't shoot them all type thing.
Yeah, and like even Dean shot the final basket. Jamal did really well at the basketball, but like Dean lost it for his tribe at puzzles and other stuff. And so Jamal, I also don't have a very distinct memory of him being so good at challenges. Like we know Jamal is also really good at puzzles, but it just seems that like Aaron somehow is being portrayed in the light that he's like super amazing, versus other people are like good, but like they don't win it every single time. So could bode not too hot for Aaron in the future, because I wouldn't want it to go against him in the merge.
Yeah, I feel like Aaron just like he has a lot that is pulling against him right now, so I cannot see him going much farther.
Yeah, which I don't know. I think Aaron is really interesting. If he did vote against Elaine this episode, I was like, okay, Heroes versus Villains 2, Aaron would probably be invited back to be a villain on that tribe. And I was like, oh, I like seeing Aaron in the villainous role. I like the villains. And so I want to see more of what he has to offer. Him and Missy are a cool duo. Low-key cocky at points, but I think they're an interesting weird power dynamic between them, because I feel like one would cut the other because they want to have all the power, which would be sort of funny to see.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, like we said, there's a lot of stuff we're going to be finding out next week's episode, as there always is. So let us know down in the comments below. What do you think about Aaron? What do you think about Jason being voted out? Are you sad that he's gone? Are you
Sad.
happy that he's gone? Like, what do you think is going to happen next week? We love hearing what you have to say because we're only 2 people and we only have 2 opinions, and we like hearing more.
Yes, so thank you all so much for watching. We really appreciate it. We will see you all next week for our recap episode and maybe talking about season 40 of Survivor, because apparently the tribes were announced by Inside Survivor months ago, but we just heard about it. So somehow we're behind with the Survivor gossip.